The morning on New Providence started like any other. Children ran through the streets of New Boston, the largest city on the colony world. Farmers checked their crops in the golden sunlight. Mothers called their families for breakfast. 10 billion people lived on this planet, and none of them knew it was their last day. Admiral Grace Holloway sat in her office on Earth, reviewing fleet reports. She was 62 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. Her daughter Emma lived on New Providence with her husband and 2 children. Grace had promised to visit them next month. She was already planning what gifts to bring for her grandchildren. The alert came at 0900 hours. Commander Nina Vance burst into her office without knocking. "Admiral, you need to see this, now." Grace followed her to the command center. Every screen showed the same image. A fleet of Velthari warships hung in orbit above New Providence. There were hundreds of them, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. "What is this?" Grace asked. "They're broadcasting on all channels," Vance said. "Galactic-wide. Everyone is watching." The face of Emperor Kethvorin appeared on the main screen. He was Velthari, a reptilian creature with scales the color of dried blood and eyes like yellow ice. He sat on a throne made of bones from 100 different species. "Citizens of the Dominion," he said, his voice cold and smooth, "today you will witness what happens to those who fail in their duties. The human colony of New Providence has not met its tribute obligations. They have complained, they have delayed, they have shown disrespect to their masters." Grace felt her blood turn cold. Let this be a lesson to all who think they can defy the eternal dominion. The Emperor made a small gesture with his clawed hand. On the screens, the Velthari fleet began to move. Bright lights gathered at the front of each ship. Grace had studied those weapons. She knew what came next. "No," she whispered. The first beams hit New Boston. The city vanished in white fire. Then another city. Then another. The Velthari ships moved across the planet in a grid pattern, burning everything. Forests became ash. Oceans boiled into steam. Mountains melted like candles. The broadcast showed it all. Close-up shots of cities being destroyed. People running through streets before the fire took them. Ships trying to escape and being shot down. The Velthari wanted the galaxy to see every detail. It took 6 hours to kill 10 billion people. Grace stood frozen the entire time. She watched her daughter's world burn. She watched the coordinates where Emma's house had been turn into a crater of molten glass. She did not cry. She did not scream. She simply watched, and something inside her changed forever. When it was over, Emperor Kethvorin appeared again. He looked pleased. "The human problem has been solved," he announced. "Let this serve as a reminder. The Dominion is eternal. The Dominion is absolute. Obey, and you will be permitted to exist. Defy us, and you will be erased." The broadcast ended. The command center was silent. Officers stood at their stations, tears running down their faces. Some had family on New Providence. Others simply could not believe what they had witnessed. The Velthari had murdered an entire world to make a point. Commander Vance approached Grace carefully. "Admiral, what do we do?" Grace did not answer immediately. She was thinking about her grandchildren. Tommy was 7. He loved dinosaurs. Little Sarah was 4, and had just learned to read. They were gone now, reduced to atoms floating in the ashes of their world. She thought about the fleet under her command. 47 ships. Old ships. Weak ships. The Dominion had thousands of warships, each one more powerful than anything humanity possessed. In a fair fight, humanity would be crushed in days. But Grace Holloway had not survived 30 years of military service by fighting fair. She turned to face her officers. Her voice was calm and steady. "Send orders to all human worlds. Implement Protocol Omega. All ships return to home systems immediately. Cut all external communications. No signals in or out." Vance looked confused. "Admiral, Protocol Omega is that's the Total Isolation Protocol. We've never used it." "We're using it now. But the other species will think we've collapsed. The Dominion will think we're defeated." Grace looked at her with eyes that had turned as cold as Velthari ice. "Let them think that." She walked to the main console and entered her command codes. Across human space, the orders went out. Colony worlds began shutting down their communications arrays. Ships broke off from trade routes and headed home. Within hours, humanity would disappear from the galactic stage. "There's something else," Grace said. "Contact Dr. Samuel Price at Lunar Research Station. Tell him Operation Prometheus is active. He'll know what it means." "Operation Prometheus? I don't have clearance for that file." "No one does. It was created 20 years ago by people who saw this day coming. People who knew the Dominion would eventually try to destroy us." Grace paused. "It's a plan for what comes after. A plan for vengeance." On the screens, news channels from across the galaxy were discussing the massacre. Alien commentators talked about the human tragedy in bored tones. Some expressed mild sympathy. Most simply moved on to other stories. 10 billion dead was not even the lead headline. The Dominion committed such acts regularly enough that it barely registered. No one was coming to help humanity. No one was going to demand justice. The galaxy had watched them die and shrugged. Commander Vance stood beside her admiral and looked at the empty space where New Providence had been. "What happens now?" she asked. Grace Holloway turned away from the screens. Her face was stone. "Now we disappear. We go silent. We let the galaxy forget about us." She walked toward the door, then stopped. "And then, Commander, we make them remember. We make them remember until the stars themselves grow cold." She left the command center. Behind her, the screens continued showing the galaxy's indifference. Somewhere, Emperor Kethvoron was celebrating his victory, confident that the human problem had been solved forever. He did not know that he had just made the worst mistake in the history of his species. In the darkness of space, humanity began to prepare. H1, Part 2, The Silent Years. 3 years passed. The galaxy forgot about humanity. The Dominion's intelligence reports noted that human worlds had gone dark. No communications, no trade, no contact with other species. High Commander Serath, the Velthari officer who had led the massacre at New Providence, found this troubling. Defeated species usually begged for mercy. They did not simply vanish. He brought his concerns to Emperor Kethvoron. "The humans have not responded to any contact attempts," Serath reported. "Our spies cannot penetrate their communication blackout. Something is happening on their worlds." The Emperor waved a clawed hand dismissively. "They are hiding like wounded animals. Let them rot in their darkness. They are no threat to us." "With respect, Emperor, I recommend a reconnaissance mission. We should—" "You worry too much, High Commander. The humans are primitive. Their technology is centuries behind ours. What could they possibly do?" Serath bowed and left, but the doubt remained in his mind. He was right to be worried. Behind the communications blackout, humanity had transformed itself. Every factory on every human world now served a single purpose. Every scientist worked toward a single goal. Every citizen contributed what they could. Sleep became a luxury. Rest became a memory. Dr. Samuel Price stood at the center of it all. The Lunar Research Station had grown into a vast complex spreading across the moon's surface. Thousands of researchers worked day and night, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. "Show me the progress on the gravity weapons," Price said to his assistant, Dr. Yuki Tanaka. Tanaka was a small woman with tired eyes and oil-stained hands. She had not slept in 30 hours. None of them had. "We've cracked it," she said, pulling up holographic displays. "Dominion shields work by dispersing energy across a field. But they can't disperse gravity. We've created a focused gravitational beam that collapses matter into itself. One shot can destroy a cruiser." Price studied the data. "How many can we produce?" "With our current facilities, enough to arm 2,000 ships within the next 6 months." "Make it 4 months. Admiral Holloway wants the fleet ready by spring." Tanaka nodded and returned to her work. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Shipyards operated around the clock, building vessels of a new design. These ships were smaller than Dominion warships, but they were faster and carried weapons that no other species possessed. Engineers who had once built commercial freighters now constructed engines capable of outrunning anything in the Dominion fleet. Captain Daniel Ortiz stood on the bridge of the first completed ship. It was called the Retribution, and it was beautiful in a dangerous way. Sharp angles, dark hull, hidden weapons that could crack a planet. Ortiz was 40 years old, a former freighter pilot who had lost his brother on New Providence. He had volunteered for the new fleet on the day the attacks happened. For 3 years, he had trained for this moment. "Take us out," he ordered, "nice and slow." The Retribution lifted from the lunar surface and moved into open space. Her crew of 200 worked their stations with nervous energy. This was the first test flight of humanity's new weapon. "All systems operational," reported Lieutenant Marcus Webb, a young officer with hard eyes. His entire family had died on New Providence. His parents, his sisters, his grandmother who had raised him. He carried their memory like a weight on his shoulders. "Bring weapons online," Ortiz commanded. The ship hummed as the gravity cannon charged. At the edge of the solar system, a Dominion patrol frigate had been watching human space for months. It was a small ship, only 50 crew, sent to monitor the silent human worlds. They had reported nothing of interest for 3 years. "Captain," said the Retribution's weapons officer, "target acquired. Dominion frigate, bearing 27 Mark IV. Ortiz felt his heart beat faster. This was real. After 3 years of preparation, they were finally going to see if their work had meaning. Fire. A beam of pure gravitational force shot from the Retribution. It crossed the distance in seconds and struck the Dominion frigate. The alien ship folded in on itself like paper being crumpled by an invisible hand. Metal screamed. The hull collapsed. In 3 seconds, a proud Dominion warship became a ball of compressed debris, no larger than a house. The bridge was silent. Then Lieutenant Webb began to laugh. It was not a happy sound. It was the laugh of a man who had waited 3 years for this moment. "It actually works." Captain Ortiz stared at the debris field where the frigate had been. He thought about his brother, who had died screaming as New Providence burned. "Return to base," he ordered. "We have a lot more ships to build." Back on Earth, Admiral Grace Holloway received the test results. She sat in her private quarters, reading the report by lamplight. The gravity cannon had performed beyond expectations. The new engines were 30% faster than projected. Shield technology adapted from captured Dominion equipment was being installed on all vessels. Commander Nina Vance entered with a tablet. "Final fleet manifest, Admiral. 2,147 ships. Crew assignments are complete. All captains have been briefed on Operation Reckoning." Holloway took the tablet and scrolled through the names. So many ships, all of them ready to fight and die for humanity's vengeance. "What about the diplomatic component?" she asked. "Ambassador Claire Dunham has prepared her team. They're ready to move when we give the signal." Holloway set down the tablet. "The Emperor is holding a celebration in 6 months. The 500th anniversary of the Dominion's founding. It will be broadcast across all 40,000 systems. Vance understood immediately. The same network they used to show New Providence. Yes, we're going to use their own stage. Holloway stood and walked to her window. Outside, ships moved through Earth's orbit, their hulls gleaming with new weapons. 3 years ago, they made the galaxy watch us die. Now the galaxy is going to watch us rise. She turned back to Vance. Send word to all fleet commanders. We launch in 6 months. And Commander, make sure everyone understands. There will be no mercy, no hesitation. We are going to show the Dominion what happens when you wake a sleeping giant. In the darkness of space, humanity's fleet continued to grow. 2,000 ships became 2,100, then 2,200. Each one carried the names of the dead on their hulls. 10 billion names that would never be forgotten. The Dominion had wanted to make an example of humanity. They had succeeded beyond their wildest fears. Part 3. The Broadcast. Velthar Prime was the heart of the Dominion, a world of dark spires and ancient palaces, where the Velthari had ruled for 500 years. Today, the entire planet celebrated the anniversary of their empire's founding. Emperor Kethvoron sat on his throne of bones, surrounded by the greatest nobles of his species. Thousands of Velthari filled the grand hall, dressed in ceremonial armor that gleamed under crystal lights. Holographic displays showed celebrations happening across all 40,000 Dominion systems. Billions of subjects watched the broadcast, required by law to witness their emperor's glory. A historic day, announced the Imperial Herald. 5 centuries of Dominion rule, 5 centuries of order, 5 centuries of peace through strength. The crowd applauded. The Emperor raised a clawed hand in acknowledgement. Then the herald continued with unexpected news. We have a special guest today. Ambassador Claire Dunham of the human species has requested an audience. She comes to formally submit to Dominion authority and beg forgiveness for past failures. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The humans? No one had heard from them in 3 years. Most had assumed they had collapsed into civil war or simply died out. Emperor Kethvoron smiled. This was perfect. What better way to celebrate than to watch the last survivors of a broken species crawl before him? Bring her in, he commanded. The great doors opened. Ambassador Claire Dunham walked forward alone. She was a woman of 50 with silver hair and calm blue eyes. She wore simple diplomatic robes, nothing fancy. Her footsteps echoed in the massive hall as thousands of Velthari watched her approach. She stopped before the throne and bowed her head slightly. You may speak, the Emperor said. Thank you, Emperor Kethvoron. Her voice was steady and clear. I come representing the remaining human worlds. For 3 years, we have been silent. We have had time to reflect on our position in the galaxy. And what have you concluded? The ambassador looked up at him. We have learned something, yes. And what is that? She smiled. We have learned that you should never turn your back on a wounded human. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. What is the meaning of? Every screen in the hall went dark. Every holographic display across the Dominion flickered. Then new images appeared. Space. Empty space above 12 different locations. 12 of the most important Dominion military installations. Shipyards, command stations, fleet headquarters. And emerging from hyperspace at each location, human warships. The crowd gasped. The Emperor stood from his throne. The ships were unlike anything the Dominion had seen, sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that pulsed with strange energy. There were hundreds at each location, thousands in total. On the bridge of the Harbinger, Admiral Grace Holloway watched the enemy installations grow larger on her screens. Her fleet had arrived exactly on schedule. 12 simultaneous attacks, coordinated to the second. All ships, this is Admiral Holloway, she broadcast. You know why we're here. You know what they took from us. Today, we take it back. All units, weapons free. The human fleet opened fire. Gravity cannons tore through Dominion shields like they were made of paper. Shipyards that had taken centuries to build exploded in seconds. Command stations crumbled. Docked warships were destroyed before they could launch. Back on Velthar Prime, the Emperor watched in horror. His military installations were being wiped out faster than the broadcasts could keep up. Numbers scrolled across the screens, losses mounting by the second. "How is this possible?" he hissed. They had nothing. Ambassador Dunham stood calmly amid the chaos. "We had 3 years, Emperor. 3 years while you forgot about us. 3 years while we built and planned and waited." High Commander Sarath rushed into the hall. His scales had gone pale with fear. "Emperor, we've lost contact with 12 major installations. The humans are using weapons we've never seen. Our shields are useless." "Then send the fleet. Destroy them. The fleet is scattered across the Empire. It will take days to mobilize." On the screens, the battles were ending. 12 installations, destroyed in less than an hour. The Dominion's military power had been crippled in a single coordinated strike. Admiral Holloway's face appeared on every screen across the galaxy. She was older now, her hair completely gray, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "Citizens of the Dominion," she said, 3 years ago, you watched as our world burned. You watched 10 billion of our people die. You watched, and you did nothing." Her voice echoed through the grand hall on Velthar Prime. "Now you will watch something else. You will watch us come for the ones who murdered our families. You will watch us tear down everything they built. And you will remember this lesson. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. And humanity does not lose." The broadcast shifted to show the human fleet reforming. 2,000 ships, moving in perfect formation. "Emperor Kethvorin," Holloway continued, "you have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. If you do not, we will come to Velthar Prime. We will glass your world the same way you glassed ours, and we will broadcast every second of it." She paused. "The choice is yours. Make it wisely." The broadcast ended. Ambassador Dunham looked at the Emperor. His claws were digging into the arms of his throne. His scales flushed dark with rage and fear. "You cannot do this," he snarled. "The Dominion has ruled for 500 years. You are insects." "We were insects," Dunham replied. "Now we are something else." She turned and began walking toward the exit. 72 hours, Emperor. I suggest you use them well." No one stopped her. No one moved. The entire hall was frozen in shock. As she reached the doors, Dunham paused and looked back one last time. "Oh, and Emperor, happy anniversary." She walked out into the chaos of a crumbling empire, leaving behind a hall full of terrified rulers who had just learned the true cost of their cruelty. In space, the human fleet set course for Velthar Prime. Part 4. The Reckoning. The Dominion had 72 hours. They used every second of it. High Commander Sarath worked without sleep, calling every ship in the Empire back to Velthar Prime. From distant patrol routes and occupied worlds, the Dominion fleet gathered. By the time the human deadline arrived, over 10,000 warships hung in orbit around the homeworld. It was the largest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled. Ships of every class, from massive dreadnoughts to fast cruisers. Their combined firepower could crack a planet. Against any other enemy in the galaxy, it would have been an overwhelming force. Sarath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Vengeance, and waited. He had studied the human attacks on the military installations. Their weapons were terrifying, yes, but they had only 2,000 ships against his 10,000. Numbers had to count for something. "They're coming out of hyperspace," reported his sensor officer. The human fleet arrived like ghosts emerging from shadow. 2,000 ships, in perfect formation, spreading into attack positions with mechanical precision. At the center flew the Harbinger, Admiral Holloway's flagship. On the Harbinger's bridge, Grace Holloway studied the enemy formation. 10,000 ships, 5-to-1 odds against her fleet. She felt no fear, only cold determination. All ships, this is the Admiral. The enemy outnumbers us. They think that means they'll win. She paused. Show them why they're wrong. Attack pattern Omega. All weapons free. The human fleet surged forward. Captain Daniel Ortiz commanded the vanguard from the Retribution. His squadron of 50 ships hit the Dominion line first, their gravity cannons firing in coordinated bursts. 3 Dominion cruisers collapsed in the opening seconds, their shields useless against weapons they couldn't understand. Focus fire on the dreadnoughts, Ortiz ordered. Don't give them time to organize. The battle spread across thousands of kilometers of space. Dominion ships tried to use their numerical advantage, surrounding human vessels with multiple attackers. But the human ships were faster, slipping through formations like water through fingers. Their weapons struck with devastating precision. Lieutenant Marcus Webb led a strike team in a modified assault shuttle. While the fleets fought in open space, his team had a different mission. They burned toward a Dominion command station orbiting Velthar Prime's largest moon. 30 seconds to breach, Webb announced. His team checked their weapons and prepared for close combat. The shuttle smashed through the station's hull. Webb and his soldiers poured out, weapons blazing. Dominion guards fell before they could react. The humans moved through the station with terrifying efficiency, trained by 3 years of simulation and rage. Find the communication archives, Webb ordered. The Admiral wants everything they have. On the Eternal Vengeance, High Commander Sarath watched his fleet dying. The humans were everywhere, their small ships darting between his larger vessels, striking and vanishing before his gunners could respond. Every time a Dominion ship tried to corner a human vessel, 2 more appeared behind it. We've lost 300 ships, his aide reported, voice shaking. The humans have lost 30. That's impossible, Sarath hissed. We outnumber them 5-to-1. Their weapons go through our shields, Commander. Our guns can't hit them. They're too fast. Sarath slammed his fist against his console. This was not how war was supposed to work. The Dominion had conquered the galaxy through superior numbers and firepower. These rules had not changed in 500 years. But the humans did not play by those rules. On the Harbinger, Dr. Yuki Tanaka monitored the fleet's weapon systems. She had not slept in 2 days, sustained by stimulants and purpose. Her creations were performing beyond all expectations. The gravity cannons were tearing through Dominion ships. The new shield technology was holding against enemy fire. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Lieutenant Webb's team, she reported. Holloway turned. Put it through. Webb's face appeared on screen, sweat and blood mixing on his forehead. Behind him, his team was downloading data from Dominion computers. Admiral, we found it. Communication logs from the day of the massacre. Every order, every transmission. His voice grew hard, including a personal recording from the Emperor. He was watching the broadcast while it happened. He was laughing, Admiral. Laughing while our people burned. Grace Holloway's expression did not change. Transmit everything to the Harbinger. Then get your team out. Yes, Admiral. Within minutes, the evidence was broadcast across every channel in the Dominion. The galaxy saw Emperor Keth-Voron watching the destruction of New Providence. They heard him joke about the screaming humans. They watched him toast his officers as 10 billion people died. Subject species across the Empire watched in horror. They had always suspected the truth about their masters, but now they saw proof. The Velthari were not strong leaders bringing order to the galaxy. They were monsters who laughed at genocide. The battle continued, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The human fleet carved through the Dominion formation with relentless precision. Captain Ortiz's squadron alone destroyed 40 enemy ships before noon. Other squadrons matched his count. The space around Velthar Prime filled with the wreckage of Dominion pride. By sunset on the human clock, it was over. 8,000 Dominion ships had been destroyed. The remaining 2,000 had fled or surrendered. Humanity had lost 400 vessels, each one a tragedy, but a price they had been willing to pay. Admiral Holloway looked at the path to Velthar Prime. It was open. Nothing stood between her fleet and the homeworld of the species that had murdered her daughter. She opened a channel to the Emperor. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your secrets are exposed. The galaxy has seen what you really are." Her voice was ice. 47 hours remain on our deadline. Surrender or burn. She cut the channel. Commander Vance approached her quietly. "Admiral, what are your orders?" Holloway stared at Velthar Prime on the main screen. A beautiful world from this distance. Cities glittering on the night side. Oceans catching the light of distant stars. 10 billion Velthari lived there. Civilians, families, children, just like New Providence. "Hold position," she said. "We wait for their response." Vance nodded and returned to her station. Grace Holloway sat alone with her thoughts, and the weight of the decision that was coming. H1, Part 5, A New Order. 47 hours passed. The Emperor did not surrender. Admiral Grace Holloway stood on the bridge of the Harbinger, looking at Velthar Prime on the main screen. The planet hung in space like a dark jewel, its cities still glowing with light. 10 billion Velthari waited below, most of them probably praying to whatever gods they believed in. Commander Vance approached with a tablet. "Admiral, all ships report ready. Bombardment coordinates are locked, awaiting your order." The order. One word from her and Velthar Prime would burn the same way New Providence had burned. The same weapons, the same destruction, broadcast across the same galactic network. Perfect revenge, perfect justice. Grace thought about her daughter Emma. She thought about Tommy and little Sarah, her grandchildren who had never grown up. She thought about 10 billion voices crying out and then going silent. She could give them vengeance. She could make the Velthari pay in the exact same currency they had used. Eye for eye, world for world. But then what? She thought about what humanity would become if they did this. They would be no different from the monsters they fought. Future generations would inherit not a victory, but a curse. The species that committed genocide would become the species that committed genocide twice. "Admiral," Vance asked quietly, "your orders?" Grace Holloway made her decision. "Launch the landing craft," she said. "Marines to the surface. We're taking the planet intact." Vance stared at her. "Admiral, we're not going to—" "No, we're not." Grace turned to face her crew. "We are going to do something harder than destruction. We are going to prove that we are better than them." Within the hour, human Marines landed on Velthar Prime. They met resistance at first, Velthari soldiers fighting desperately to protect their homeworld. But the outcome was never in doubt. Human weapons and human training proved superior in every engagement. The Marines pushed toward the Imperial Palace with careful precision. They took prisoners instead of killing wounded enemies. They protected civilians who cowered in their homes. They were professional, disciplined, and utterly unstoppable. Emperor Kethvoron made his last stand in his throne room. His personal guards surrounded him, ancient warriors in ceremonial armor. They died bravely, but they still died. When the shooting stopped, Lieutenant Marcus Webb stood before the Emperor with his weapon raised. "On your feet," Webb ordered. The Emperor rose slowly. His yellow eyes were full of hate. "You should have destroyed us when you had the chance, human." "We would have." "I know," Webb said. That's the difference between us. They dragged the Emperor out in chains. The broadcast went live immediately, showing the ruler of the Dominion stumbling through the streets of his own capital, as human soldiers escorted him to justice. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in silence. Ambassador Claire Dunham had prepared for this moment. Within days, representatives from every species oppressed by the Dominion gathered on Velthar Prime. They formed a tribunal, judges from 100 different worlds, all of them victims of Velthari cruelty. The trial was brief. The evidence was overwhelming. Emperor Keth Vorin was found guilty of genocide, not just against humanity, but against dozens of species over centuries of rule. His sentence was life imprisonment in a cell, where he would spend his remaining years watching recordings of the civilizations he had destroyed. Death would be too easy, Ambassador Dunham explained to the press. He wanted to make us watch our own destruction. Now he will watch his legacy crumble. The Dominion collapsed, not from destruction, but from loss of legitimacy. Without their aura of invincibility, the Velthari could not hold their empire together. Subject species rose up across 40,000 systems, fighting for their freedom. Human advisors helped where they could, but the rebels fought their own battles and won their own victories. In the months that followed, a new galactic compact formed. It was not an empire. It was not ruled by any single species. It was a union of equals, bound by shared laws and mutual respect. Humanity took a seat at the table, but they did not take the throne. Ambassador Dunham addressed the first assembly of the compact. Her words were broadcast across the galaxy. "You watched us die," she said. "When our world burned, you turned away. You did nothing. We could have made you watch this world burn in return. We had the power. We had the right. But we chose something different. We chose to build instead of destroy. We chose justice instead of vengeance. We chose to prove that strength is not measured by what you can destroy, but by what you choose to protect." She looked at the assembled representatives from 100 species. That is what it means to be human. Remember it, learn from it, and build a galaxy worthy of the sacrifice that brought us here. The assembly rose in silent respect. 1 year later, Admiral Grace Holloway walked alone through a memorial park on the rebuilt colony of New Providence. The planet had been dead, its surface glass and ash. Now it was being reborn. Forests were being planted, cities were being designed, people were returning. At the center of the park stood a wall. It stretched for kilometers, covered in names. 10 billion names, carved in stone so they would never be forgotten. Grace found the section she was looking for. Her hand trembled as she touched the letters. Emma Holloway, Tommy Holloway, Sarah Holloway. Her daughter, her grandchildren. She stood there for a long time, tears running down her weathered face. Around her, the sun set over a world being reborn. Children played in the distance, their laughter carrying across the empty fields. "We didn't become them," she whispered. "I hope you're proud, Emma. I hope wherever you are, you know that your mother did the right thing." She wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. There was still work to do. A galaxy to help rebuild, a future to protect. Admiral Grace Holloway walked away from the memorial as the stars came out overhead. Behind her, 10 billion names watched over a new world, a permanent reminder of what had been lost and what had been saved. Humanity had struck back, but more importantly, humanity had remembered who they wanted to be.